Hey everyone, we've got ourselves a brand new featured location, the Collapsed Mine, and the Collapsed Mine is going to add 4 rocks to a location. You either have to destroy the rocks or skip a turn to actually destroy the location. So naturally, I'm going to be discussing 6 different decks for you, 4 of which are in Pool 3 and above, 1 of which is in Pool 2 exclusive, and 1 of which was in Pool 1 exclusive, all of which take different approaches with different cards to try and give as many people with as many different collections a chance to find some success. Now, these decks are very experimental. The expectation is that these are good launching points for you that you can then swap a couple cards here and there as you continue to experiment, because the location just came out and nobody's perfect. One might say nobody's perfect. Anyways, let's get started with the deck number 1. Now we have to talk about Deathwave Pool 3 because Deathwave here is just so natural. Yes, it's another location that takes advantage of Deathwave and death in general, and this location here is just too good with this deck. So what you have here is a classic Deathwave based list. I almost don't even want to explain it too much because it's the usual. Now the one thing worth noting is that if you destroy 8 rocks, 4 on either side, with a Killmonger or something like that, death basically becomes a 1 cost immediately. That is why Moon Girl is more or less a must-have here, because with Moon Girl, you're going to have multiple 1 cost deaths. It's just insane, right? So, this location disproportionately does benefit the use of death. You can almost throw death like in a deck that doesn't even have, destroy cards in it, and you just might be able to pull off some crazy plays because, well, death's going to be a 1 cost if you wipe out those 8 rocks. So naturally, Deathwave is in a really good spot right now, definitely a consideration for you, and I think Moon Girl is required for this featured location. Now we're going to talk about the Zabu counter list. Now this Zabu counter list, we're going to actually feature a list with Silver Surfer, we're also going to feature Zabu, we got others as well, so stay tuned. This one here is going to use Zabu in order to basically kind of take advantage of a couple things. First of all, if you can counter the destroy decks with armor as a good tech card, that's great. You could even put, honestly, you can almost put death in this list. This is a straight up freebie, by the way. Like if you don't have She-Hulk, She-Hulk just benefits from like the skipping of a turn. Because remember, you might not actually be against a destroy deck. Very unlikely that you aren't, but anyways. She-Hulk is a high value card that allows you to skip a turn, take advantage of that access mana. Now, I don't recommend running, what's his name? Sunspot. Don't run Sunspot because there's going to be Killmongers everywhere. Yes, you can protect the Sunspot with armor, but there's going to be Destroy everywhere on the ladder. So, in terms of skipping turns, I feel like She-Hulk is the better bet. Now here, you're going to run Chavez for the Zabu. You do have the Spider-Man, Absorbing Man combination, the White Queen for the scouting, the Crossbones, because people playing Destroy decks are often not going to have enough tempo on the board. Like, Deathlock's kind of their biggest tempo play. They also have, obviously, the Bucky Barnes Carnage plays, but you should be able to play Crossbones pretty effectively. Then you have the Arrow, and naturally, Leader, as much as everyone hates Leader, including myself, Leader is very good against Deathwave because you play Leader and you match the Deathwave play. Even if they play 2 1-cost deaths, you copy that. So Leader's actually kind of really important right now, which is kind of ironic, right? So that's the Zabu counter list. And then we have ourselves a value counter list. Now this is my favorite one that I'm going to be playing with here. It's a little unique. This is how it works. So, a couple cards and you're like, well, Alex, really? Listen to me out. So basically you have Uatu, greater chance to pull Uatu by about 4.5-5% using America Chavez. You see Uatu, you have Uatu in your hand. You see where the Collapsed Mine is going to go. You throw down armor. You throw down armor, the Collapsing Mine fills the location, they can't destroy it, and it's filled, and essentially you have armor in that location. Now, they can skip the turn, but the nice thing about this is that you're able to kind of like effectively play around the death and destroy based list because the rocks don't get destroyed. So that's kind of nice as well. Now, that is actually technically a mechanic that we're not 100% sure about. If they skip the turn and it's under armor, the rocks should remain. I should actually kind of quantify that a little bit. So bear that in mind that if you skip the turn, the rocks should be destroyed, and if they're under armor, they should remain stationary. So Uatu into armor, again, very experimental here. You also have the Lizard high value play. Destroy decks are very unlikely to run 4 wide, so Lizard's really good value. Cosmo, great counter for Destroy decks. And then you have the Kingpin Magneto, pure value plays as well. Very good cards. Maximus as well. White Queen might give you a chance to steal death, by the way. Steal their She-Hulk or whatever. Arrow gives you a lot of versatility on turn 6 in conjunction with the Kingpin. You also got Black Bolt, who's great because if they blow up 4 rocks, you don't have the armor, they blow up the rocks, Black Bolt should hit the 1-cost death, right? That's kind of why Black Bolt's here. And then you have the Leader, because as I explained prior, Leader is a great counter to Deathwave, and then the Chavez for the Uatu armor. So very experimental. Gonna need additional testing, but one that's worth kind of throwing out there, especially when we confirm the interaction between the Collapsed Mine's rocks and the armor, okay? So that's the one thing we need to kind of keep in mind there. Then we have, continuing with pool 3 and above, we do have counter Surfer. The idea here is, once again, using armor to counter a lot of the death-based lists. Now, this does not run leader, so this might be a little more susceptible to the Deathwave style lists. You do, however, run an overall good list. You do have the Rogue for anybody kind of brave enough to play Patriot. You could actually take the Rogue out. I think anyone playing Patriot is probably a psychopath because of the fact that you're going to have a situation where just Killmonger's going to be everywhere, right? Those rocks aren't going to survive. However, you could theoretically, I made a deck and I cut it out of the list because I wasn't too confident in it. I did have an Uatu armor-based list with Patriot, but I'm like, man, how perfect does the draw have to be to actually pull that off? So if you still want to play Surfer, this is a pretty good list as well. Nova might get killed off early. You do have the armor to counterplay. Again, if you can actually, this is one of those things that we'll say, when Collapsed Mine's kind of like on rotation, I would play the armor like offensively into the locations. Like, so if you have an unrevealed location on turn 3, play armor into that unrevealed location to potentially hit those rocks, right? It's pretty good. I think that's pretty interesting anyways. And you can obviously proc the armor to buff up the rocks. Just be very aware that Polaris can pull a rock out and give them an opportunity to play. That can be very risky. So if you're in a situation like that, you can either sub Polaris out for someone else, or you can add, like, honestly, I might even do it right now. I might actually sub out Wolfsbane and Polaris just because Wolfsbane is really good in these lists as well. Polaris might be a little too risky with the rocks. If you're not, if like you're like, hey, my RNG, I'm not getting any, Collapsed Mine, then put Polaris back. But Wolfsbane, this might actually be safer. I might like this list better. Anyways, let's move on to the next list here. We are moving on to Pool 2. Pool 2. Now, this is pretty interesting here. A lot of people are going to be running death-based lists. Now, this is highly experimental. But basically, you want to take advantage of skipping those turns, right? So skipping those turns, Sunspot, Armor, Infinite, classic kind of package that'll really take advantage of that. I do think that the Moon Girl is a good play here. Why Moon Girl, Alex? Because you can Moon Girl Devil Dinosaur, do a classic combo there. Now, this deck is not built around just running up the Devil Dinosaur. It'll still be a value card. You do have Sentinel. You do have the Moon Girl. Those are kind of the value cards for Devil Dinosaur. You do have Chavez as well. But overall, you can also play Nightcrawler in advance into like lanes that might have rocks, because then if the rocks fill, you leave a spot for Nightcrawler, you take the Nightcrawler out, and then you can play someone like Cosmo in there, or not really Cosmo, you can play anyone in there really, and then Storm it, for instance, and then prevent them from accessing the location, even if they Killmonger. So there's some options there as well, but you're going to probably want to armor the Sunspot, do a traditional play with the Infinite, and obviously you have the Devil Dinosaur Moon Girl style value as well. So, very experimental list. One worth trying for Collapsed Mine. Now, one thing I will say is in Pool 1, I think Collapsed Mine is probably the most fun. The reason for this is because you get to use the rocks as your own. You get to use the rocks to your advantage here. Now, Squirrel Girl might be a little too much. Like, I debated about taking out Squirrel Girl. I don't have the opportunity to, like, particularly test Pool 1 decks effectively. So, again, very experimental. But Blue Marvel, Khazar, Onslaught, I think that Mr. Fantastic is good here. Wolfsbane will be good here with the zoo mechanics. I like playing Nightcrawler in advance of unrevealed locations. So if you get the rocks, you can move it out, play a card in there like Wolfsbane, right? Imagine playing like Nightcrawler on turn 2 into a location. It becomes the rocks. You have the extra space. You move Nightcrawler out. You play the Wolfsbane. And then you have the Angela, of course, in combination with all these 1-drops. Ant-Man's great too. Like on turn 1, if it's not the location, the Collapsed Mine, you play Ant-Man into a future location as well. So I think being kind of like proactive with the location is kind of a neat idea. But regardless, I do think that in Pool 1, you're probably going to have the most fun because you're going to use the rocks for what they're designed for. You got the Blue Marvel, you got the Khazar. I think Mr. Fantastic gives you the additional reach as well. So I think there's a lot of really interesting play arounds with this particular location. As always, these deck lists are designed to really give you a launching point into the featured location. They are brand new. Testing is limited, so be very willing to make some adjustments on your own on the fly. And guys, again, that is one of the best parts about the game, learning from experience and designing and owning agency across your own decks. Thanks so much for watching. I got another video down below as well. Hit the like button if you want to support the series, and we'll see you in the next Marvel Snap video.